meeting is live. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm going to like to call to order the Public Safety Committee meeting for Tuesday, April 27th, 2021. I'd like to allegiance, if you would. Please stand if you can. Ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Adam, we do the roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Committee member Leffler.
and just want to say, I don't know how this works on the phone, so if I get a call and drop off, I'll be back.
Duly noted. Committee member Walsh.
Here.
Let's see. Vice Chair Janice, I do not see. Chair Bercuda.
Here.
All right. Captain Malat. And I am noting that Captain Manhart and Chief Capobianco are not in attendance either.
Thank you. I think that our regular meeting, our agenda number 4 is informal presentation on Tri-Cities Radio Amateur Civil Defense, Civil Emergency Services RACES program. I'd like to introduce Joe Lopez. He's the Chief Radio Officer for the Tri-Cities Radio Amateur RACES group, which comprises of Dana Point, let's see, Dana Point, San Clemente, and Capistrano also. So with that, welcome, Mr. Lopez.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Can you tell us a bit about the RACES program, how it started?
Yeah, sure. It started back in 2007, I believe. A couple, me and a friend who had been ham radio operators just out of hobby, just goofing around with them. We were mountain bikers, kind of pre-early days of cell phones. So when we were pedaling out in the national forest, we thought it was a good idea to have that little feature there. But after a while, we started to realize, a couple of us within the group, there's several hundred of us that belong to a club in Mission Viejo there called the SORAS, South Orange Amateur Radio Association. They have a great group, training, a lot of stuff, multiple RACES groups. Memberships are represented in that one club. So it's a really great place to go hang out and meet new hams. For the most part, we got approached by the CERT coordinator for San Juan Capistrano. Michael Cantor approached myself and a gentleman named Mike Morgan, who used to work for the city of San Clemente as a building facilities. Yes, he used to be a facilities person, I believe it was. So he's a good friend of mine.
Do I have to mute every time now?
So anyway,
If I talk, you're gonna hear me.
about starting a RACES group through the city of San Juan Capistrano.
Okay, I'll keep my mouth shut then, I guess.
And after we talked a little bit about that, we thought maybe
I'm gonna mute out right now.
to include the other 2 cities in our small area, to include so that membership could be a little more robust. We can get feeder groups such as the CERT groups in the city of San Clemente, as well as Dana Point, feeding the Tri-Cities RACES organization as well, getting members and people who want to, kind of cross over from the amateur radio hobby side of amateur radio and go into the service side where you're doing public service things and that sort of thing. Well, the group got started. We got some funding from the city of San Juan. All 3 cities signed off with the city attorneys signing the charter. And that was filed through the Orange County RACES organization, which is chartered directly by the Sheriff's Department. And I know you were all emergency services personnel at one point, retired and the such, so you'll understand the the operational area for disaster preparedness in Orange County out of, I believe it's Long Beach, out of the air station there is Orange County's main function is going to be out of Lomas Ridge, and that RACES organization, as far as radio volunteers, private citizens who step up and create voice links, data links, video links, whatever we need to provide for first responder groups, shelter managers, whatever it needs to do to create a link between City Hall, emergency operations centers, and say any field operation you guys may want to do. So in a nutshell, that's what it is. We managed, multiple memberships, make sure that they were all live scanned. They went through a process. We had weekly and monthly trainings. Even fit back before COVID, we would go train at the high schools on the weekend where we'd have the whole campus to goof around on, that sort of thing. We can put repeaters on hilltops. We can, plant somebody in the middle of a field and he can sit there, with 8-hour, replacement services. We, indefinitely, we can put some eyes and ears on the ground wherever anybody needs it in our geographical area. We're kind of challenged here with all these little hillsides and stuff and valleys, radio wise. So, but with an amateur support group of volunteers who are generally using their own equipment most of the time, they don't really ask for much. But we have been getting some funds from the cities. We're putting together some cache of extra radios that we can build little boxes with batteries built into them, solar panel kits, that sort of thing. So any other questions that are more specific that you guys would like to know about, I can open it up for anybody.
Great. Now, how many current members in San Clemente do you have?
San Clemente, I was just kind of going over that little thing, and I had the rosters. I think it's probably close to, I can give you just a second here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Looks like you have about 10, but this last dated, this has to be at least pre-COVID. So I'm thinking that maybe about 1.5 years is the last time this was updated. Okay. So there was 10 for San Clemente. I see about 6 or 7 for Dana Point. And the last time we did it here, looks like San Juan Capistrano, which usually had the most because the program was started in San Juan Capistrano, kind of getting fed off of the CERT group that every time they would annually graduate a class, we'd get 2 or 3 that would be interested in, if they were already hams, we can turn them into emergency services workers, or we can tell them exactly and walk them through the process of how to go to that club I was talking about in Mission Viejo, meet some folks, get them hooked into the classes. Next thing you know, they're licensed, and they're very excited when you get people like that. They're doing this for the first time, and it's always nice to have that.
Good. Okay, and to become a RACES member, you have to have your federal communication licenses and live scan, correct?
Yes. Your FCC license consists of I think it's a 34 question test, technical as well as safety related kind of questions that the FCC asks us to get right. And once you become licensed, you're licensed for 12 years. There are multiple levels of licensing for like beginners, medium, road, and the experts in the field who get have a lot more knowledge and experience, setting radios up from the ground floor, building them by scratch. In some cases, some of the old timers can do a lot of that stuff. But amateur radio is definitely hasn't fallen by the wayside, as a lot of people think, because we are so tied into communications nowadays. Everything seems so simple. It all came from amateur radio. We the forefathers of this particular hobby and this service that the U.S. government has provided, utilizing frequencies that they sell for millions of dollars a year, but we get 26 bands of spectrum, digital, analog, whatever. We can play all over the place. So it really helps to not only get some of these are the things the city's going to be getting for free. These are kind of some nice resources, but you also get the benefit of that. You can actually, in the community, we start bringing up kids out of the community who want to learn about this. They have no idea that amateur radio is even still in existence. And a lot of people will come to that realization when you kind of incorporate it into your CERT program and maybe have a 20-minute, 15-minute talk during the class about amateur radio and blah, blah, blah. Here's how you get a hold of those guys if you want to take the next step beyond what you're doing now. So that worked really well in San Juan. We got a lot of, like I said, takers to come along and at least check it out.
Great. And how do you see the RACES asset helping the city during disaster time?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the things that we trained for and we had in place were in the event of any call out, any emergency, anything that's taking place in town, we would come up on the air right away. So we have a repeater that we borrow from one of that same club, the Sora Club. They let us use that radio repeater above Nixon Hill up there on trying to think of the name, sounds like Salvador, the top of the hill up there, and it's been up there for years. And we use it every Wednesday night for the net. I believe it's Wednesday or Tuesday night, and they do a roll call and check in with people from their houses when they get home from work, and sometimes they're traveling, and sometimes but we get a solid check-in once a week. That's practice, and they'll try to incorporate a little training involved in that practice too, and have them spell things out phonetically and stuff like that, so that all that stuff gets worked on all the time, because it's easy to get a new hobby and then just leave it on the shelf and not play with it. So we try to get them all excited and involved and do all that sort of thing. But then our whole training was centered around responding to the EOC. Respond to the EOC, because that's where you're going to get your instructions from our sponsoring agency. So if it's the city of San Clemente, city of Dana Point, Tri-Cities RACES members would go to their designated city and come up on the air, because we could tell you to go somewhere else. We may have newer information. Yeah, you're on route to where you're supposed to go, but you know what? We already know where you need to go. And we can call them on as they're moving. We can divert them and have them go somewhere else and plant them where they need to be, so that the agencies that are requesting them can start to utilize them. And so basically that's it. Basically we have a little net we can put together real fast, get them together, get assembled, and then start doing shifts and rotations of shifts, because that person can't sit there all, for 2-3 days. He's going to have to give up his shift after 8 hours or so. I think it goes to 10 if you want to be a hardcore volunteer. But after about 8 hours or so, we're going to have to relieve him. So as soon as I get, we would get somebody planted. We'd have a net control operator who's getting all that information and tying it together and getting multiple shifts, depending on the duration of the event.
Right, and the event would, the worst case would be is if the 800 megahertz, the Orange County system just collapses, and you're our backup for that, correct?
Yeah, they have a very redundant system built into theirs. They even kept a lot of their old analog frequencies laying around in the closet, and they utilize them for different things. So Orange County has a very robust communication system, and it's I don't know if I would worry so much about them going down as much as, but they absolutely can, because of the hilltop repeaters that they depend on and the microwave links that they rely on to make those established connections. But we don't have a lot of that infrastructure that can be compromised in, say, an earthquake or a power outage or something like that. We can go vehicle to vehicle with the batteries that we have on site. Because we train to do this as part of our hobby, most of the people have batteries that are charged off to the side in their home, so they can have something running at the house, and that maybe an extra one to take to go do a deployment or a call out. So ideally, that's what we would train our people to do. They would be an independent radio system that could go out, plant themselves where we need them, have a handheld, have a powerful mobile radio and an antenna they can push up on a nice pole, so they can get nice and long distances and into the emergency operations center of the cities that are requesting them, or one of our cities. It really wouldn't matter. We'd be able to relay back and forth to the EOCs.
Great, good resource. Any of the committee have any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Mr. Lopez, who's in event of emergency, do you guys have a schedule of who's to respond to the EOC?
Generally, and it depends on the time, the time frame. If it's middle of the day and during the week, a lot of maybe our members are going to be in different parts of the county at work and different places like that. So we try to make sure everybody understands that when the call goes out, there's going to be some retired folks who are going to hear it. It's people like me, the leadership in the different groups, because each city has its own radio officer, and then there's a lead officer, myself, title the chief radio officer, who oversees the 3 city officers. And then whenever they need support to go talk to managers or something like that, maybe secure some funding or maybe get access to a hilltop location for who knows what project, then I can offer that some kind of support that way to kind of maybe try to work that out. I mean, we haven't had too much luck in that area. San Juan Capistrano has given us a little water tower spot there, and we got some of that data mesh node radio stuff on that tower up there, and a high def 4K camera that we can basically see any wildfires coming from Santiago Peak and the main divide coming, basically west towards downtown San Juan. They can look at that camera and watch that plume. How close is it? How much time do we have? That sort of thing, So it sits up there above the golf course in San Juan Capistrano on the hill. It creates a very nice little feature for them to look at. I mean, you can pan it around and look at different things, traffic on the freeway, whatever you want to do. I mean, these are just kind of like extra eyes and ears somewhere, wherever you can put them, that will offer you some support somewhere.
I guess what I was alluding to is that it seems like plan to be effective to assist and augment the communications for emergency operations is somebody has to be at the emergency operations center. And so far I haven't heard how that takes place.
Yeah. Well,
the fact that
emergency
something happens, everybody knows they're supposed to go. I mean, shouldn't somebody kind of be assigned to do that?
Well, we're all volunteers, so people have regular jobs. But what would happen is we would assign somebody. I would probably assign somebody. I try to find 3 people right away. Okay, they call me and they say, we need your support, your ACES guy. So I would get on the telephone right away and see if I can contact people that I know might be in town, and I would get them rolling to the EOC. Now the EOCs have already been outfitted with RACES equipment. So the city has purchased radios in the last, I guess, 12 years now, and some by grant funding, some through Edison type things. And so they have console radios, amateur radios mounted in the EOCs. All I got to do is send an operator over there, flip the switch, and they turn it on. And at that point, they have a manual that they carry around. Everybody knows what frequencies to go listen on. This is what we're going to talk on from radio to radio. This is the point where we're going to use the repeater, that sort of thing. And as soon as they arrive at the EOCs, they're going to run into whoever's in charge of allowing them in the gate and making sure they are in fact allowed to be there, and they have their IDs, and they will already know the procedures. They have a manual. There'll be a manual at each EOC, and that talks radio and that sort of thing. And the thing is, the nice thing, we were able to head off when we first bought the radios. A lot of the cities bought the exact same model radios, so we can train on one brand of radio for all 3 cities. And that's worked out pretty good. There's a couple things, it's kind of hard. You guys probably seen municipalities in action. Not everybody buys the same equipment that can all talk to each other. So we were able to kind of do that and at least have the same radios, the face plates of all the radios be the same. So when comes time to try to program it or change something on it, everybody kind of knows how to do it.
All right, thank you.
I mean, I hope that helps or answers the question. I mean, we're generically trained to respond to the building. And if they don't have time to grab their own radios, or the buildings on the 2nd or 3rd floor or in the basement, wherever the EOC is located, we already have radios in place, and we tend to want to get in there very often to go and check for maintenance. It hasn't been done in a while, but we tend to be the ones who go and maintain it, check it out, make sure it's all working properly.
All right.
Now, Joe, you talk about the EOC. Right now with COVID and everything, it's kind of, not being used. So it looks like in public safety services, they'd have a remote EOC. Are you capable of handling that type of a operation?
Yeah, the city of San Juan gave us some Edison funds 2 years ago. We have a cart. It's like a big behemoth on wheels, and it hooks up to a trailer hitch on anybody's vehicle. And it is a cart basically that houses power supply, backup battery, 2 or 3 radios already in it. You can mount a computer, and basically it's a command post communication setup on wheels. It's the size of a taco cart, kind of a grill kind of a thing. It's pretty big, and it's plug in, and but like I said, battery operation too. We spent a little bit of money on it, and it's stored in a sea container here at City Hall. So if we ever had to not use, say, if San Juan's both creeks rise up to the point where their EOC is now a pontoon boat, they're gonna not want to occupy that building, obviously. So they're gonna be able to get out of there and find some high ground somewhere, probably out at the horse stables or something, and set up an EOC. We can do that. We can set up a remote EOC communication center to not only talk to each other, but communicate directly with the Lomas Ridge and the Orange County Emergency Operations Center operational area people, depending on the size of the incident.
Good. Anyone else have a question?
I guess one last one.
Go,
Is,
Gary.
do you guys participate on, there's annually a earthquake preparedness day where most of the cities roll out their EOCs and kind of, run them through their paces just to make sure everything works. Do you guys participate in that?
Yes, we can, and it goes out countywide from the sheriff's RACES group. So they set up the drill usually, and there's it's kind of like a rodeo kind of a thing where you go in and you'd have to make so many contacts, all the different modes of abilities to make contact with them, and so you do as many chances as you can. We have done it in the past. We've had operators from San Clemente want to do it, and the ones from San Juan can't. We can't get enough people to want to do it. So it's hit and miss, but they do it every single year. And our group is always called in to ask and is asked, how many guys are you going to do it? And, and where are you going to do it? What your locations are you going to do it from? And so we would go to San Clemente and simulate being in the EOC because it's on a Saturday. Sometimes it's on a Wednesday afternoon, and folks work. So sometimes those are earthquake drills that they do for the state of California, that the state EOCs are the ones who do those. But yeah, we have participated in the past, and every year get the opportunity, and it's always fun when you can do it because it's a lot of training. You get a lot more knowledge about what's really going to happen in an incident. It's not just going to be us. We have to be able to communicate with outside agencies as well.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Anybody else have any questions?
I think Rick did. Rick, did you have?
It's not a question. I just wanted to make a comment. When this topic came up a couple of months ago, I really had no knowledge about it. But my best friend, was also an LAPD officer, has been a ham radio operator since the 60s and is highly involved in RACES even before he went on the department. So he gave me the rundown and the ins and outs and some of the history, and I can see nothing but benefit. And so I have. One thing I have to say is any way that we can support the program and make sure that it continues and maybe gets enhanced, I'm ready for right now.
Well, great, thank you. Yeah, we know the asset and the value behind it. I mean, we're the ones donating our time and our own personal equipment and training ourselves and doing all that stuff in the behind the scenes, and the city emergency personnel come and go. They come in for a couple of years, and next thing they're off doing something else. So we have to kind of reestablish that connection and say, this is important because all over again. So we've been doing exactly this for the whole time that we started this program, because there's always been a new manager. There's always been a new city council, and somebody wants to know, who are you people again? And so that's why I'm kind of, they gave the job to me because I can't stop talking sometimes.
Thank you, Joe. Yeah, it's one of those, unless you understand the program and how vital it is for backup. Communication and disaster preparedness is essential. And since we found out that the RACES and the CERT program and other items like that are actual city programs that are in the general fund are to be supported by the city. So it's just bringing it up again, and I think it's our obligation to investigate that and endorse it and make those recommendations as they come along.
Well, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys even starting this group. If we'd have had this 7 years ago, we may have been farther down the road, and all the agencies, volunteer agency groups that are doing similar activities could be, a little farther down the road. But we've always kind of wondered, we need to have this liaison group of professionals talking to the professional, politician side of it. And then, here are the technical volunteers who are trying to kind of relay what's really going on. You professionals have lived with this communication stuff, and you guys know how important it is and what an asset it is. So I appreciate you guys. So.
Right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Joe, and we'll stay in contact because we're trying to develop this program to be more beneficial to the community and more visible too. And hopefully through the Neighborhood Watch program, we can advertise the availability of helping out on a volunteer basis.
More planning can always hurt more than it can always help more than it can hurt.
Gotcha. Good. Now, Joe, if you any other closing comments?
No, other than that, I mean, you guys you have my number, contact information. If you have any more questions you think about later, feel free to send me a text or an email or whatever you like. So.
Got it. Well, thank you very much. Now you can stick on and listen to the rest of the program, or you can jump out if you like.
Okay. All righty. Thank you. I might mute myself if another helicopter might go by. Sorry about that.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you, guys. All right.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Adam, I think we're going to go to the shopping carts and the camping procedures. Is that what the program is?
Yes, the two, well, now that we have Vice Chair Janice with us, we'll have a quorum no matter what, but I would recommend that we move either to the minutes or to item 8, new business. I think item 8 is going to take the most amount of time, so
Okay.
I'd recommend that we just jump to that item.
To the number 5, the minutes, or to number 8?
My apologies, to number 8,
Okay.
8A. And if that's okay with the committee, I will begin with a short staff presentation on that. Okay, so
Rick,
before-
Can I just move that we approve the minutes from the last public safety meeting and get that done?
yes, you may, and I'll second that.
okay, then I'll take my apologies, committee member Leffler. We do have one person that does not have video, so I do have to do a roll call. But I will note committee members Walsh and Leffler voted aye. Chair Bercuda,
Aye.
that's an aye, and committee member Vice Chair Janice.
Aye.
Okay, that passes 4-0, and that was a motion to approve both sets of minutes.
Good job.
All right. Okay, so moving on.
Now we can go to 8.
Okay. All right, so the item before you under new business is a consideration of ordinances to prohibit on public property both shopping carts and the storage of private property. I gave a short presentation to the Joint Homeless Subcommittee on this matter. 2 of the committee members are on that subcommittee. I don't know if the other two committee members had a chance to see that, but just for the public's edification, as well as anybody that may not have seen that, the council at their a previous council meeting requested that the Joint Homeless Subcommittee and the Public Safety Committee both review the possibility of some new ordinances to prohibit shopping carts and the storage of private property. And both of these items relate to them being on public property. So in the agenda, there's two links that lead to existing code related to these items. The issue with shopping carts is pretty straightforward, and that relates to what is essentially the ordinance as it's codified now, requires businesses that provide shopping carts to do certain things to deter people from stealing those shopping carts and giving the city recourse to collect shopping carts that are found in the public. One of the shortcomings of this is that there's no real mechanism within the municipal code to cite somebody for violating, or excuse me, cite somebody for having a shopping cart in the public right of way. That section of code is a business and professions code of the state of California, something that the city staff, specifically code compliance and the park rangers, do not have the authority to enforce. So that would, it's only OCSD that can cite for that, and they have in the past. However, most of these issues with shopping carts are dealt with by a cart retrieval service that works with the businesses to just simply take the carts, and there's no municipal code violation for actually having a cart that's not owned by somebody in the public right of way. So as we discussed this with the Joint Homeless Subcommittee, the idea there was to improve our code to basically reflect the business and professions code of the state, so that our local municipal enforcement officers could cite somebody for having a shopping cart in public. That's one option. However, the options here are somewhat limited. So further discussion is up to the committee on that one. And then moving on to the storage of private property. The city's code does address this as well. And what we have right now is an ordinance that allows city staff to address abandoned property. This is it's camping related. So if it's related to an encampment that we come across, if somebody leaves that encampment, those items are essentially identified as abandoned, and city staff is able to take this non-essential items immediately. Non-essential items being things other than blankets and tents and tarps, medications, cell phones, a bicycle, things of that nature. We can take those immediately. However, for essential items, we have to post those items for 24 hours. And if they still remain abandoned 24 hours later, then those can be collected and those can be stored. And then we have to store them for 90 days. Some background on the discussion with the Joint Homeless Subcommittee on that one is that similar, I should say, jurisdictions with similar issues to San Clemente have been trying to tackle this issue for a little while. There's no, I can't say there's really a clear direction that that most cities are going in, but what they're trying to do is cut down on the amount of personal storage that is occurring at within certain areas of cities. From an enforcement perspective, I had discussed with the subcommittee that it would be a benefit to identify particular areas of the city that are where the storage of personal items creates an inherent danger to the public welfare. And those would be places around fire hydrants, around ADA parking spaces, fire lanes, places of public access, areas where vehicular traffic may present a danger, not only to vehicles, but to pedestrians, as well as the people storing their items there. And that was ultimately the Joint Homeless Subcommittee's approved recommendation for that. I will say that there is no direction from the council that any of these ordinances be drafted for the council's consideration. So all you're being requested to do at this point is to either recommend to the council a determination that these ordinances are something that would benefit the city staff in addressing these items. With that direction, the city council would then make a determination of whether to actually move forward with a code amendment. But they wanted the input of the Joint Homeless Subcommittee and the Public Safety Committee first. So I will end my presentation on that note. I can answer any questions you have. Otherwise, feel free to deliberate on this matter.
Well, I think we got to do a motion first before we can start deliberating, right?
No, I recommend that you discuss the issues. Any questions that you might have, which I see Committee Member Leffler does have a question, and then ultimately make a decision on whether to move forward with the recommendation.
Yeah, the discussion we had at the Joint Homeless Subcommittee, I think, was pretty encompassing. I liked all of your suggestions. The only thing I would like to add after thinking about it is where people block a sidewalk completely with their belongings, and say a wheelchair person now has to go into the street because they can't get by. So I think we need to make the wording broad enough to cover any location where pedestrians, ADA would be affected, or their safety would be affected by the people's belongings blocking whatever it be.
Yes, and from a staff perspective, that would be a critical aspect of any ordinance. We would want to identify a minimum width of path of travel that must be maintained. And I would go so far as to say that we would probably want to specify a maximum distance that restriction could be. And that's to say that, along a sidewalk, there are typically inlets where people coming in opposite directions can, identify that somebody else is coming, and let's say two wheelchairs are not going to pass by each other in front of the senior center. They have to acknowledge each other from a distance, and one person has to come by. So there's a minimum amount of distance. Like, we would not want to maintain a 4-foot path of travel for 30 or 40 feet. We want to say any restriction to that would be less than, X number of feet, just so people can have that kind of communication when they're going to pass each other. And as I noted in the Joint Homeless Subcommittee meeting, a lot of these issues were thought about as the city was drafting our sidewalk vending ordinance, because the state required that we allow sidewalk vending, but we could limit it based on negative impacts to the public welfare. And so there's really a lot of similarities with this item and street vending, in that people are going to be occupying public space with their belongings, and there's there's just, regardless of the purpose why they're storing stuff, there's always going to be some potential negative impacts. And I think through this whole process, we've learned even more about what some of these negative impacts can be. So yes, staff would definitely support Committee Member Leffler's comments on that.
Yeah, Adam, remind me again, was there a certain time period that the property is allowed to stay on the side, in sidewalk areas?
At this point in time, unless there is an exigent circumstance that would require somebody's stuff to be moved, or they're, let's say, camping in an area that is identified as a high fire danger location, there's no timeframes that apply to when they can store personal stuff. There are timeframes applied to when tents can be erected, and that's between the hours of 5 p.m. and 10 a.m.
Yeah, I was just thinking that I was looking for the potential of trying to enforce the law if, like on the typical Sunday farmers market, are erecting things and start putting things on the sidewalk, and then somebody, because there are people that advocate for folks who like to carry around their goods and stuff, and they'll say, well, you're biased because this guy has a backpack out here, yet this guy, just because he has a stand, you're letting him stay there. So are they prepared to make exceptions or something to that degree?
That would have to be something that we'd look at through the ordinance. Staff is very aware that there would be there are always exceptions to the rules, but at no point in time would staff recommend anything that we believe that would not be upheld in a court of law. So we definitely want to provide people the leeway to exercise their freedoms. However, what we're trying to address is the storage of personal items that would have a negative impact. And there are certain times where, I think there are areas where stuff should never be stored, almost for any amount of time. If somebody comes by with a backpack and they set it down for 30 seconds, and they pick it up and keep walking, I don't think they're going to have any issues from city staff. But if it's there for an hour, we would like to address it.
Can you guys hear me?
I can hear
Yes.
you, Joe.
Yeah, Joe.
Okay, it's kind of difficult to not the video is off from my voice, so I'm trying not to watch the video. But is this, Adam, is this a real major problem in the town, or what's going on here?
We get a lot of complaints about personal items stored, and a lot of them relate to.
It's a homeless, correct?
This is primarily, yes, the storage of personal items.
So I was reading the one ordinance about camping. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that if we had a shelter, then we wouldn't have a problem enforcing a lot of this stuff. Am I off base by saying that, or what?
No, that's actually correct. The issue here, though, is that whether we have shelters or not, we can enforce certain provisions of the camping ordinance. What we're talking about is when they have personal items being stored, the protocol currently that's required by the code is that essential items need to be left alone for 24 hours, regardless of where those personal items are.
And that's the ones that are stored and abandoned, or is that when the person is with their property?
That's when the items are abandoned.
Okay, so from what I've seen, I don't see a bunch of it that's been abandoned. I see some homeless folks that do have their stuff with them and their in the sidewalks and stuff, but I don't think they abandon them very often because they're afraid it get stolen. That's what all they have.
Well, can I address that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick, go ahead.
well, that's what we're looking to do is tighten this up. And even if people are with their items, if they're not essential items, if they're just, there was a lady that was storing, she had 50 feet by 4 feet of junk on the sidewalk. Stuff is not essential. Even if she's with it now, we could enforce that and make her move it or remove it ourselves.
will we be able to do that? Are the laws going to allow us to go in and do that?
Yes. Am I wrong, Adam? If we had an ordinance, wouldn't we be able to enforce it?
It's not abandoned.
Well, again, it comes down to an issue of what is the purpose? What is the compelling governmental interest in adopting enhancements to our code? If the item is related to preserving and maintaining public welfare, then I don't really see many problems with doing that. You know, it would be like if somebody set up a tent in the middle of El Camino Real in one of the lanes of traffic. There's no question they're getting moved. Like there's just no question about it. And the reason is because there's a compelling governmental interest to maintain vehicular path of travel. Well, our code is just not as strong when it comes to maintaining things like pedestrian path of travel or the city's access to our own electrical utility boxes and underground vaults and fire hydrants, things of that nature. As far as identifying property that is being stored in public but not necessarily endangering anybody, that one, it might be difficult to actually remove that property. We would probably need the support of OCSD staff, and that's a question that would have to be answered by them as the council considers this kind of amendment. But what I can say is that any laws that the city of San Clemente passes, at bare minimum, city staff would be able to issue citations based on those. And depending on the egregiousness of the violation, that could be an administrative citation with a fine, or it could be a misdemeanor citation that they would have to answer to a judge for. So, the enforcement is, everything's going to be a case-by-case basis, just based on the nature of the offense. But those are some of the options.
Okay, I've got a question that is for clarification. What's the difference between somebody dumping stuff on a sidewalk and a person that, say, the homeless person who just walks away from it, from their belongings, I guess, or bags of trash? I mean, what's the difference between the two? And then the other one is if the homeless person walks away and abandons this stuff, who do you cite if you can find them?
Well, abandoned property is much easier to deal with because there's no acknowledgement of ownership. The best practices that have been identified in the last few years related to the post-Boise decision are to identify whether this is camping related or otherwise. And if it is camping related, the cities are in much better positions if they simply take those items and store them. If you're talking about somebody dumping like mattresses and things like that on the side of the road, those are clearly not encampment related. And so the best practice there is just to call our CR&R and have them do a pickup for us. When it comes to items that are with people, that's where it might get a little bit more nuanced as far as what our options are to abate those nuisances.
Right, and with going and making a municipal code to address that of what's essential and what's not essential, that would be interesting to read how you come about that.
That's already something that the city has passed and adopted. The city council, when they created Chapter 886 camping, they part of it allowed for clarification of the city's process and protocols to enforcing this section of the code to be adopted through basically a policy and procedure approved by resolution of the council. And they did adopt a resolution at the same time, and that resolution is what identifies essential and non-essential items. As far as the, how big of a problem is abandoned property, I would say it's rather large. I mean, we have we have to notice items that are essential and left for any period of time, and that's a form that we've put together, and we use it quite regularly. I would say at least, I would say about 30 times a month.
So what do we do now with the property?
Well, if it's not essential, we can just dispose of it, and then we leave a notice.
Are we doing that now?
Yes, we are.
Okay, so do we need an ordinance to do it?
No.
Okay, so my whole concern, I don't understand this real well, but it seems like there's a lot of questions that need to be answered before we even deal with this. Who's going to enforce it? Can they enforce it? We could be getting in a real can of worms right here. I'm just not sure. I don't know. Maybe if Rick and Gary want to take this on, but I kind of think it's going to be a little waste of time right now before we really know what we're doing here.
Let's go to Rick right now.
Well, let's remember that this is directed by the city council. And the reason that they want us to look at this is because they're getting tons of complaints about people leaving stuff, blocking public access. I don't think the city council sent us this because it's not a problem. I think they wanted us to look at it and get some directions. It is a problem. Other cities have drafted municipal codes to address it. And I think by best practices, we should probably take a look at doing the same thing to give our code enforcement more power to deal with this and to protect the quality of life in the city.
All right. Got my hand up here.
Okay, Gary.
Yeah. So for Nick and Joe, because you weren't at the homeless committee meeting, one of the primary reasons for creating the municipal code is for the enforcement side of things. Because currently, like for the shopping carts, there's a business and professions code, but that relies on the sheriffs to issue those citations and such. And there's some more things involved as it gets a little bit, tightens it up more if it becomes a municipal code. What this does is allow our city to be able to direct code enforcement officers to issue those citations. One of the more effective means of enforcing laws with homeless is to get them into what is virtually called the homeless court. And it bypasses the normal superior court process in municipal court and goes to a specific court which deals just with homeless issues. So they go in and they go before the same judge constantly who can try to steer them into corrective behavior programs. So that's one of the primary tools and reasons why we're looking at this.
Okay, Gary, you said it perfectly. And also, just to simplify it, I'll ask Adam. Adam, would some clarification and some modifications to our municipal code make it easier for you, who's head of the park rangers and code enforcement? Would it make it easier for you to enforce these, to do enforcement that's needed? I'll ask it like that.
Yes, thank you for this question. Additional enhancements to the municipal code would help code compliance and the park ranger staff address concerns, of which we get many from the residents and businesses of San Clemente.
Okay. So with that, do we need to look at something that you would draw up, but we look at again, or can we make a motion to move forward on the enhancements to the municipal code that are laid out in the agenda?
The only thing the council is technically requesting at this time is a potential recommendation that the council make a determination to amend the code. So all the Public Safety Committee needs to do is make a motion to recommend that the council do further investigate the potential for this type of amendment. And I should say these types of amendments, because they are talking about two separate ordinances potentially.
Okay, after hearing Adam's opinion that it would help, I'd like to make a motion that we approve a motion to forward this information of enhancing code enforcement to the city council.
Is that still up for discussion?
We gotta get a second first.
I give a second.
Okay, there we go. Now, Joe, what do you have to discuss on this?
So one of the things we said that it makes it easy for the the sheriffs to enforce our municipal codes. Will they enforce that municipal code?
Well, this is the advantage of this, is that our own code compliance officers can issue the citations.
Yes, OCSD could. They have decided they're really not going to enforce many of our municipal codes. It's just what they've decided not to do. So that's another reason we need to at least have the city council look at this.
Okay, I guess, you know, I'm going to vote along with you guys. I think you guys got a better handle on it than I do, since you're on the homeless outreach committee and things. But one of my biggest concerns is, you know, we get so many ordinances that just aren't enforced. You know, we find out later that, oh, I can't do it because of this or that. Then we got to look at the amount of time that our staff, that OSC has to enforce it. So there's a lot of variables to this whole thing, you know, and I'm just not sure if we could give justice to an ordinance that's going to be enforced and not just spending a lot of time, you know, spinning our wheels. But
well, that's up to the Joe. That's up to the city council. We're not passing an ordinance. They're looking for direction, and all we're doing is saying, yes, you ought to look at it. That's on the city council, not on us. So again, there's been a motion and a second, and I'd like a vote.
I got one more thing for discussion. Since we've got Captain Malott on monitoring this, will this direction that we're giving also include camping on the beach? Adam, do you have anything on that?
You know, I can speak to that. As far as camping on the beach is concerned, it could. Camping on the beach is something that we address on a nightly basis. I think you're speaking about during the day, the accumulation of belongings on the beach. That could be something also investigated by the council. You know, I can tell you that the staff report that accompanies the recommendation, any recommendations that the Public Safety Committee makes, and the recommendations that the Joint Homeless Subcommittee already made, it's going to have a good amount of background in it, and it will probably tee up the council to consider a number of potential areas of impact.
Okay. I want to ask Captain Malat, do you see a problem with camping on the beach in with junk, basically?
Good afternoon, everybody. I would say in the past it has been a problem. Recently, in the past few months, it has not been a problem. Lifeguards are tasked in the morning throughout the day. If we see an encampment, we'll report that encampment to code enforcement, and they'll be made aware and make contact with if there's a camper there, and then come back, because the beach is open or is closed from midnight to 4 a.m. So if they're there after midnight, and that's when the park rangers would make contact and do their due diligence.
Got it. Okay. All right. Any other comment for discussion before we vote?
I will make one comment here, and I would recommend that we clarify the motion to speak more to making a motion to recommend that the council move to amend the code related to shopping carts and the storage of personal items.
That's my motion.
Did the second agree with that?
Yes, yeah, that's what I thought I was seconding.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Joe Janis, is it clear to you what the motion is?
Well, yeah, yes, it is. But once again, I think that this thing has fingers going off into everything, you know, and it gets all down to to camping and not having a shelter, and it's just another Band-Aid that it seems that we're trying to fix something. We're just chasing something right now. So I get it. It's about shopping carts and abandoned stuff, but I just don't feel all warm and fuzzy about this whole thing. It's gonna solve a problem that we have.
Yeah, well, it looks like it gives a vehicle to pursue stuff that they don't have right now. So anyway, let's call a vote. All right, Adam?
All right, let's see, subcommittee member Walsh, or excuse me, committee member Walsh.
Aye.
Committee member Leffler.
Aye.
Vice Chair Janis.
Aye.
And Chair Bercuda.
Like we got 4-0.
Chair Bercuda, your video just froze for a second there. Was that an aye?
Yes.
Okay, with that, thank you. I've got a split to go get my computer. So you still have a quorum. So I will watch the rest of this later in giddy anticipation. Thank you all for your support, and thanks, Nick, for bringing the radio thing forward. I think it's really, really valuable, and thanks for all you guys for your hard work. And when Joe gives the neighborhood watch update, I want to tell you that he's working his butt off on this. I'm really impressed and grateful of all the work that Joe's done. With that, I will talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot.
Signing off, huh? Thank you, Rick. Okay, moving along here. Now we skipped over informal presentation of the manager of the code compliance and park ranger. Do you want to proceed with that one?
Yes, we can do that one now. Cade, are you with us, and can you start the PowerPoint? All right, let's see. I may need to get in touch with our IT staff and have them put the PowerPoint on.
All right.
PowerPoint should be out.
Do you all see the PowerPoint?
No.
No.
There we are.
Good. Got it.
All right. Okay, well, first off, let me apologize. I presented information similar to this at a public safety task force meeting in the past, and I like the PowerPoint enough that I revised it for today. However, I forgot to change the title, so apologies on that. But my name is Adam Tamian. I'm the manager of code compliance in the Park Rangers, and I will give a background on code enforcement today. I discussed the Park Ranger program, one of the last meetings, so today I will complete my presentation of the division with code enforcement. I will be going over essentially their enforcement responsibilities, resources, and capabilities. Next slide. So code compliance, as far as the code enforcement aspect of the division, this does not include the park rangers. Is made up of a number of staff and some contracted services as well. So within our division, we have an administrative assistant that deals with the day-to-day calls and complaints that we get, and essentially does the dispatching for those kinds of things. We also have a 24-hour answering service for when that person is not in the office to answer complaints 24 hours a day. In terms of our field staff, we have a senior code compliance officer, we have a code compliance officer, a code compliance technician, and a swing shift code compliance technician. The senior officer, the officer, and the technician, they all work during the week, during the day. Our swing shift code compliance technician operates between 2:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. Thursdays through Sundays. So we cover a large portion of the week. In addition to these folks, we also oversee the city's weed abatement the weed abatement program. So we have a weed abatement contractor that we work with to carry that out. And then we also have a code enforcement legal services contract with Silver and Wright, and they are they fill the role of our city prosecutor in terms of the discussion that we just had about who would enforce what. When code compliance or the park rangers issue misdemeanor citations, they are prosecuted through the courts by our city prosecutor. So let's see, next slide. So code compliance is classically related to private property. There are exceptions, of course, to everything, but by and large, the code compliance division is charged with investigating allegations of municipal code violations on private property and taking the action necessary to correct those violations. Since we're dealing with private property, there's a lot of training and emphasis placed on protecting people's constitutional rights related to their property, which is why most cities have some type of code compliance or code enforcement, because it's really a specialty of enforcement. We don't have the same luxuries of enforcing things on public property or the public right of way, and so there's a specialty here. In terms of municipal code enforcement, one of the issues there is that we oversee and enforce many portions of the municipal code, more than anybody could possibly become an expert in. And so we rely on a lot of city staff and other divisions and departments to assist us in identifying what the actual violations are on properties that we receive complaints about. But some of the examples of the portions of the municipal code that we deal with are the zoning code, the building code, our business license requirements, the city's engineering and development standards. We deal with some of the environmental programs codes, even though they have an enforcement officer of their own. We deal with some graffiti issues and weed abatement. Animal services, once in a while, CASA, the Coastal Animal Services, I think I got that wrong. There are our animal control. They have their own officers to deal with a lot of animal stuff, but once in a while there are portions of the code that we need to address. And then there is always the potential for everything else. Next slide. In terms of working with other city staff, this is an org chart of the city. The colored boxes, the red ones are basically the departments that we deal with most. The yellow boxes are those departments, the portions of those departments that we work with regularly. And this is just to demonstrate that there's a lot of coordination required in the carrying out of code compliance services. Next slide. So some of the common violations that are reported, and this is really a short list, but there are things like unlicensed businesses, the illegal use of residential property, commercial and residential lighting. It tends to be a big one lately. Commercial signage and banners, unpermitted home businesses, loud neighborhood disturbances, disabled parking space maintenance, accumulation of debris, substandard housing, unpermitted residential units. Those are the kinds of things that we get a lot on private property. However, unpermitted camping, that's something that we have addressed both on private and public property. Since the park ranger program has really come online and we've done a lot to increase and enhance their capabilities, they would typically be dealing with unpermitted camping on public property. But there are still times where people are camping on private property in areas where camping is not permitted. So that would be something that code compliance would deal with. Next slide. So in a traditional sense, these are the kinds of things that people would associate with code compliance. Dilapidated properties, trees and vegetation that are on private property but affecting public right of way, clutter in front of stores, graffiti. Next slide. Hoarding situations, that's something that we deal with. Unpermitted residential units and signage. The picture on the far right is actually a pretty notable case. Somebody had essentially created, I want to say 7 or 8 individual rooms, studio apartments almost within a single family residence. And they, in order to do that, they had to combine things like shower areas and sinks. So building code violations, zoning violations, all of those kinds of things. Before we go to the next slide though, a lot of the violations that we get are hard to take pictures of. They're from the outside, they could just look like a normal, well-maintained property, but it could be something like a vacation rental that's either in a zone that's not allowed, or it's a vacation rental that does have a permit, but is not operating consistently with those approvals. So next slide. So most of our complaints are sent to us through our online portal, and I always make a note of how to submit a complaint to the city, because the more people can do this online, the less time it takes for us to begin to investigate. Essentially, all of our complaints need to be submitted through this process, whether it's the complainants that do it or it's city staff that does it. So if somebody calls us, then we're going to go in and type in all this information basically at the same place. So it's nice if the person that has a concern can write the description of that complaint in their own words and then provide whatever other information they want. But it all starts by clicking on the on that button, and then it'll lead you to code compliance and code enforcement complaints. Next slide. As I discussed earlier, we deal with a lot of private property, and so it can take some time to address a lot of these issues. Their private property rights are very well maintained, and we acknowledge due process of law for both sides, both people being injured in some fashion by violations and those whose properties may be the subject of an alleged nuisance. Typically, our process is to receive the notification of a violation. Since it's private property, we don't tend to go out of our way to invade personal space just looking for violations. There are some exceptions to this. There are some things like noise, where if we hear a really loud noise as we're traveling through a neighborhood, that is something we know we would get a complaint about, and so we would tend to address that prior to getting a complaint. But for many types of violations, they may not be obvious from the street. So in most respects, we are complaint based. We would get a notification of a violation. That would begin an investigation, both in establishing that the complaint is something that we have jurisdiction to enforce, that it's actually a complaint we can do something about. And then if it is, then we would go and try to acquire or observe the violation in process. If we identify the violation, then we would contact the responsible party, and that could either be a tenant or a landlord. Sometimes it could be an HOA, and we would work to establish timeframes for compliance. Some things need to be remedied immediately. Some things can take, we know can take months to abate. So based on the violation, we would establish timeframes for compliance. If it's not an immediate threat to health and safety, or it's not something that can be immediately addressed, the code generally requires that we provide a notice of correction, and that often accompanies a 15, sometimes a 30-day correction period. If those issues are not corrected in the time frame given, then we would normally go to a citation, and that would include fines. The code allows us to cite for $100 for the first violation, $200 for the second, and $500 for every other one that occurs within the last 12 months of us establishing a violation. So while we don't do this, the way the code is written, we could cite for $100 the first day, $200 the second, and $500 for every day afterwards until the violation is abated. So non-compliance can get really expensive, but ultimately our goal is to gain voluntary compliance. We would rather people spend money maintaining their properties rather than paying punitive fines. But once in a while, citations do provide the encouragement necessary to get a violation abated in a timely fashion. Violators of the municipal code that are issued citations do have an appeal process. And so they can appeal our tickets, in which case we would have an administrative hearing to uphold those. And that's one of those things that can add some time to our cases. But beyond an administrative hearing, if assuming that non-compliance is still not met, we do have other options. Nuisance abatement is one. There's something called summary abatement, where if it's something so immediately dangerous, we can go on a property, correct it ourselves, and then charge the property owners to deal with it. We typically would only do something like that if it's if there's like a pool that has a fence and there's a hole in the fence that is clearly accessible from the public right of way. As I mentioned before, we have a legal counsel just for code enforcement, and so they can also file criminal actions or civil actions to gain compliance. And once we've gone through all of our processes, ultimately we want to be able to verify that compliance has been met and then close the case. Next slide. The current focus tends to be on neighborhood improvement. The city's general plan and council direction is quite clear on maintaining and enhancing our residential neighborhoods. And then as far as citywide impacts go, illegal camping and encampment related nuisances still remains basically the number one thing we get complaints about. But we also get a number of other complaints. Unpermitted residential land uses, unlicensed businesses are some of our common ones. We tend to get about 2,400, 2,500 complaints a year. Those complaints tend to turn into about 1,000 to 1,200 cases per year. And with 4 staff, that typically leaves a running total of generally about 50 cases that each staff person is carrying at any given time. But there are virtually no cases that we ever close just in the interest of justice. If we receive a complaint about something and we observe a violation, we do everything in our power to get that issue resolved. And again, this goes to private property. Most of the things we get complaints about are not what we would call ephemeral in nature, meaning they are recurring or they're constant, and they would be something like an illegal construction. That's something that's there, and we can go back every day and verify whether it's there or not, versus complaints that, say, the park rangers get about somebody with a dog off leash in one of our parks. That's something that could very likely be missed just by the fact that as soon as somebody complains about it, that person could get in their car and drive away, and we wouldn't see it. But on private property, the issues that we deal with tend to linger. Next slide. That was a nice transition. All right, so I'll end the presentation with our contact information. Our main phone number is 949-366-4705. And you can call that number 24 hours a day and submit a complaint, and that will get followed up on as soon as our staffing allows. But we do prioritize our cases, so things of an immediate threat to health and safety would be addressed sooner than things like an illegal sign that does not present an immediate threat to the public. The graffiti hotline is up there as well, and then our email is codecompliance@san-clemente.org. So Cade, if you can take down the PowerPoint, and I am available for any questions.
Thank you.
Do you need to wake up, Nick?
No, I got something caught in my throat. Gee whiz. I think that's pretty all-encompassing for you there, Adam. And besides all the staff work you got, you're a busy kid.
Well, we have really good staff here in the city of San Clemente, and it helps because they're code compliance, especially they tend to operate independently, dealing with their own cases, and that really helps out on our the work that I need to do. So
good. Okay, now on graffiti removal, we call the number. Is it answered by a person, or should we go to the city site and log all that stuff in?
No, the graffiti hotline you can call, and that it's that I believe is a 24-hour answering service as well. But if not, you can leave a message and it will get addressed. The city has a weed abatement contract, and it essentially identifies one contractor to go out and deal with the graffiti as it's reported. And so whether it's on private property or public property, that contractor will go out and take care of it. And they're very quick.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
It's
Hey,
important.
Adam, is there a particular noise decibel level which would constitute a violation of city municipal codes? Or
Potentially, yeah. Our chapter Title 8 Health and Safety. I want to say it's Chapter 848 is our noise control ordinance, and it identifies a number of different decibel levels at which point a violation may occur. Now, there's always variables when it comes to sound. The first being that if the area in which the sound is being generated is just the ambient sound is louder than what's permitted, then all of those thresholds would be increased. So, for instance, on El Camino Real, at businesses that have live entertainment, those businesses may be the sound from those businesses may be above the legal limit. However, so is all of the rest of the sound on El Camino Real. I mean, a car driving down the road is going to be like 75 decibels, where the limit may be 65. So,
And a motorcycle's over 100. Yeah.
and absolutely.
Right. I got yeah.
Yes, no, please.
Okay, I've got a hot burning question here. Back to graffiti. what do you do with complaints of graffiti on state property, like the freeway on ramps, off ramps, and on the freeway walls?
You know, typically those would get there, depending on where on the freeway property it is. It's either going to go to Caltrans itself or the Orange County Transportation Authority.
So do we report it to the city and the city handles it, or do I as a citizen get a hold of the state people?
You as a citizen can do either. If and this actually speaks to a larger code compliance issue. We get a lot of complaints about things that are not municipal code violations, and we don't have any jurisdiction to enforce. We will always refer a complaint to the place where we believe it should go, and we'll talk to the complainant and let them know this sounds like an issue that somebody else has jurisdiction over. You're more than welcome to also submit your complaint, but we'll forward those complaints to the appropriate parties.
Good. That's what I'm looking for, is so that the public has an idea of what to do, not worried who should I call type thing. There's a one-stop center with you.
Yeah.
Good. Any other questions for Adam on this subject? Very good. Before we go into reviews and recommendations, oral and written communications for our committee, is there anything that you can report on there, Adam?
My apologies. I was taking some notes. What was the question?
Well, I'm down to item number 6, oral and written communications to the committee.
Yes, we have not received any written communications for this meeting.
Got it. Okay. Then we go to 7, which is Code Compliance Division performance measures. Now we've got it's sent to us, code compliance. Let's see, that's under building code compliance. It was sent to us. Now we have 2 quarters listed here, and they look like they're all in 2020. Is that I'm reading this right?
Yes, that's correct. These are the performance measures from the performance measures we're reporting on right now are Q2 of the fiscal year 2021, which goes from July 1st, 2020 to June 31st. 2020, the 30th, 2021.
Right.
So this item was presented over the last few Public Safety Committee meetings, and initially all of the performance measures got pushed off to a following meeting, and then at the last meeting, the committee only discussed OCSD, OCFA, and marine safety's numbers. So we left these on in case there were any questions for the code compliance or park ranger performance measures. And I can, I will set this up a little bit. The park ranger numbers, this is still relatively new. There were no performance measures for the park rangers or the previous park monitors when they were in the Beaches, Parks and Recreation Department up until 2019. And when they came over to be put under the code compliance umbrella, the first year we created some basic performance measures for them that we put into the code compliance division's performance measures. This was it was a 1-year pilot program, and it wasn't guaranteed that the park rangers were going to stay within code compliance. So we incorporated those numbers into code compliance's fiscal year 2020 numbers. Well, now that it's not a pilot program anymore, we've begun to pull their performance measures out into their own. So in previous meetings, I've sent everybody the last 10 years of performance measures for OCSD, OCFA, marine safety, code compliance. Well, you only have like a year and a half of performance measures for the park rangers, because that's how long we've been tracking them. And these are the performance measures that we created based on the information that we had at the time. As this program evolves, I know these numbers are going, the actual metrics we use to gauge performance will change to better reflect the actual work being accomplished.
Okay. On the code compliance data, I'm trying to reconcile the numbers here. New cases, number of complaints processed, and cases closed. Should they balance out at some point?
Those numbers will never balance out. And the reason is because some of our cases last one day and some of our cases last multiple years.
Oh, good.
So an example of this would be if we get a notice about an illegal portable sign in the right of way, we can go talk to the business. They can remove the sign, and an hour after we get the complaint, the case is closed. Versus we get a complaint about a hoarding property, and it might take a month or so to get onto the property to inspect, and then it might take a couple months of issuing administrative citations before it gets referred to our legal counsel. And then our legal counsel goes to the courts and asks for a receiver. The receiver takes over the property. They decide, well, we need to demolish the house because it's unsalvageable. And then, that could last a year and a half with court appeals and things like that. So those numbers reflect a broad range in the scope and difficulty and timing of our cases.
Okay, that sounds reasonable. I was trying to balance this thing out and I couldn't, so that's an explanation that I can take. Okay. All right. Any questions from the committee on these numbers? I guess not. So let's go on to, I guess we're down to number 9 because we took care of 8. Unfinished business. Am I reading that correct, Adam?
Yes, you are.
Okay, good. I'll take up communications and disaster preparedness project update. As we had that presentation today, Joe Lopez, I was able to secure his expertise. They've been having a problem since COVID of really getting together and exercising during the COVID times, and hopefully we'll get that out. But with calls and about RACES and communications and all that, I think I've reinvigorated our committee has reinvigorated the RACES idea, and we can propel it into the next item. The RACES, and well, we set up a foundation. Last month we had Director Fontenot from the Orange County Sheriff's Department to talk about the everyday 800 megahertz. Then this month we went to the RACES which is the fallback to the 800. Next month, I'd like to have a presentation on the digital end of the disaster communications called Arden Mesh. And that'll be an interesting thing. And then at some point, we'll actually do a demonstration of how that works, how much that adds to the races. Basically, they're together and they're helping each other give better communications as we go with the technology increases. So that's what I've got on that. Gary, you got anything on homeless project update?
Yeah, there's always a lot going on with the homeless project stuff. I'll just try to capsulize it a little bit. They're still going through the processes of the hiring of the homeless outreach coordinator.
Mm-hmm.
The city is looking into a lot of different things right now, and the subcommittee is we're putting together what we call best practices, and it's a fairly all-encompassing perspective of what the city should probably be doing. As far as for the sheriffs, directing just for our purposes for the sheriff's department, they, I think we mentioned this in the last meeting, they're assigning a whole new bureau for mental health, and all the homeless liaison officers for the sheriff's department will be under that bureau, and they'll have mental health officers, not sheriff's officers, but employees virtually, that will be going out with the sheriffs and at different times. They haven't really ruled out yet exactly the specifics of how it's going to work, but they announced it last month that this is what they're doing. So that's what's going on homeless wise.
Anything on regional shelters at all?
No, that's that will be big news when that happens.
Yeah.
But no, we are still at the same position there.
Okay. And the homeless outreach person that the city's going to hire, is any known progress on that?
I think I've scheduled the orals. Adam could probably tell you more about it, but I think the orals have been interviews, I guess I'll call it.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct, Adam? The interviews have been scheduled?
The the panel interviews have been conducted, and the city has set up the second interviews to be conducted over the next 2 weeks.
Okay. Well, at least they got some progress on that. Good. Okay, Gary, on the legislative review, do you have anything on that for us?
There's actually a number of things going on legislatively, but one of the ones that I was most disturbed about was Senate Bill 299, which would allow anybody who's a victim of police violence to file suits and seek compensation for damages they incurred, regardless if they provoked them, regardless if it was justified. It just would require that the police conducted some type of violence onto people. And as we know, for most of us that have worked in law enforcement and such, there's quite a few people who don't go willingly along to jail.
Yeah.
So this, like I say, is almost an absurd type of bill. It needs to really be removed from any consideration.
Yeah. Do you know what the status is on that bill?
No, I just know that it's before the Senate now. It went that passed the Public Safety Committee and is in right now where they're fine tuning the language of it, basically.
Okay. Interesting stuff. Yeah, that would, so, as I understand it, that bill would, give money to not the victims. It would give money to the victims, but the new bill would allow the suspect and the suspect's family um, monetary support. Is
Right.
that the way you read it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Anyway.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Now, Joe, Neighborhood and Watch Project. How are you doing with that?
Okay, you hear me?
Yes, good. You're coming through good.
Okay, so last meeting, I think we showed you one of the sections, how we kind of took the one district and we made it there were like 20 sections. And so our task this month was to try and do that to as many more sections as we could, or many more districts as we could. So we do have 7 districts, and Justin Mank, and I guess it's IT, has been doing great work and great helping us a whole bunch. Thanks to Rick's accolades, but really Justin doing a lot of this work. And so we have all the meetings, all the districts divided now into boundaries. And at the next meeting, we'll show you all of those. In addition to having the districts divided into sections, each section will have all the streets listed for that section. And I think it'll be about time, Adam, that after we present this to the committee, that we actually present it to council and show them what the geographical organization will be of the city. And we'll run it by them. And if we get their okay from there, then we'll go into kind of the meat of the program, talking about getting how we're going to get out to the public and trying to get people to volunteer to be district and section captains to get this going. We'll want to get a city website going and things like that. But I think the first step is we're going to have to go to city council and let them know what our plans are. And maybe so at the next meeting or before we go to council, we could have some kind of a cost that we have incurred so far. I think it's going to be pretty minimal, but I think it would be just a good idea for us to go and let the council know what our progress is on the Neighborhood Watch program. So that's about what we have right now.
Yeah, from what we had initially, the city council was really big on the neighborhood involvement program to be established and continue. So I think we're going in the right direction there. We need to, give them an update and get their blessings so we can continue in a bigger way. Thank you, Joe. Good. All right. Now, any other projects that we need to report on?
Oh, Nick, and I don't know if this is the right spot. I wanted to mention is Thursday. I saw this in the Orange County Register. There's a YouTube live event going on, and it's entitled "The Future of Law Enforcement," and it's by a lot of people, I guess, out in the community that want to weigh in on what they feel the future of law enforcement should be. If you're interested,
Yeah.
I'll give you the I guess the link to it.
Okay.
And it's capital BIT dot small ly / capital O, capital C, capital F, capital L, and that's law enforcement, and the E is capital on that. Everything else is small. So AW small, E is large. That's the link to it, I guess, on YouTube. But the future of law enforcement. It starts at 11. I'm thinking 12 here, but hard on my calendar here. I think I put it down as 11. Yeah, it's from 11 to 12, I believe. But you could probably Google it and get the information.
Okay, can you give us that website again?
It's on YouTube, but
Okay,
the link is
Could you
bit.
text that to us?
Yeah, I just didn't know if you wanted to have it on
Yeah.
official dot, but yeah, I'll just text it to you guys.
oh, good,
You
yeah,
know, email, whichever was easier. That'd be
Yeah.
great. Thanks, Jerry.
thank you, yeah, that'd be great. Appreciate that, because, yeah, I'd like to know what the future of law enforcement is too.
Yeah.
Be interesting, see what the public has to weigh in on this one. Okay, I don't see Captain Manhart here. That Adam, do you have anything that he has submitted?
I did not receive anything from Captain Manhart to report.
Okay, great. On fire services, Captain or Chief Bianco put out a nice little quarterly newspaper on what they've been doing with stats and things. I don't see the chief here to ask questions of, but anybody have any comments on that?
No?
Okay. Then, hey, we get down to marine safety. It's yours. You're on. Thank you.
Hello, guys. So since our last meeting, we finished our rookie training academy this past Sunday. We had 13 rookies in our academy, and they finished over 100 hours. And happy to announce that 12 of those 13 are being promoted to ocean lifeguards. So in the next few weeks, we're about 32 days away from the start of summer. So we'll start to see some new faces up in the tower, and super excited to get them working here. Also, we've had, since our last meeting, 3 shark sightings, ended up being two 4-hour closures. So that's been a little bit active. And let's see here. Our staff, so every year we go out to the local elementary schools and give public education about how to stay safe at the beach, and also promote the junior lifeguard program. But because of COVID, we have not been able to go out and do our presentations at the schools. So we switched gears, knowing that that probably wasn't going to happen again. We usually do this in the springtime. That one of our marine safety officers, Nick Juni, did such a great job that we were able to send a link out to the schools, and it was well received. So that way we still got the important message to the kids of how to stay safe at the beach before they were coming down for spring break and going into summer. The public can gain access to that if you go to the city homepage, and then go to departments, and then go to public safety and click on marine safety.
Mm-hmm.
And you scroll down a little bit, you'll see a YouTube video. It's called Beach Ocean Safety. It's about a 20-minute video. And at the end of that video, is a promotional video that was done professionally for promotion of junior lifeguards. But Nick Juni just did an outstanding job with that. Also involved in that was Nick Scheel and Josh Sherritt. Nick Scheel is a supervisor with our department, and Josh is an ocean lifeguard, and the supporting staff are our full-time staff. So really stoked on that, and encourage everyone to take a look at that. We have one more swim test for junior lifeguards, and that is this Sunday. Unfortunately, we don't have enough room for everybody. There is, I was told today by our assistant, there's 80 plus people on the wait list. So registration opens up for the program on May 12th at 8 a.m. And you guys probably don't know, a few years ago, they changed the system for registration, and it crashed the system because so many people were trying to sign up their kids. But that's all been worked out. So we're excited this year to offer the junior lifeguard program since we didn't have it last year. So we're super pumped on that. Also, we had a foundation meeting last night, and the foundation, we submitted applications for different items, and the foundation approved over $15,000 worth of equipment and scholarships. They funded close to $6,000 for 25 scholarships that those who need financial assistance will be able to apply for that. And just a number of different things, the Catalina trip for the Junior Lifeguard cadets, some scholarships for staff to advance their career as far as EMT and PCA 32, some production equipment and so forth. And the foundation just does incredible things, like the trolley system is going to start up again. They have public safety announcement signage on that. Board member Greg Holsizer has been working with the city contact and making sure that's ready to go for the season with the trolleys coming back. So it's important to get those messages out. And also on the Metrolink train that comes, they'll be making announcements, safety announcements. So we really appreciate the foundation and everything that they do to support the lifeguards and our junior lifeguard program. So that's about it from the beach. And if anyone has any questions, I do have one update. We had an internal recruitment for the lieutenant's position, and Sean Staudenbar was promoted to Marine Safety Lieutenant on May 19th. So happy to have that position filled.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, because you were doing both jobs, I guess.
Yeah.
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 For about a year now or so?
That was about a year and a half.
No, right. Okay, I got a question. Forward thinking a few months, Ocean Fest.
Yeah, Ocean Fest they made an announcement, I want to say about 3-4 weeks ago that they postponed it.
Oh, okay.
So there will not be an Ocean Fest this summer.
Yeah, that'll impact what you're doing too.
Yeah, it's like July 4th. We like it when it's busy, and it definitely brings the crowds and brings the excitement to the beach. So I'm sad that they're not going to be running their event this summer. It'll be 2 years in a row. So it's, at least we get the junior lifeguards back, and hopefully we'll see Ocean Fest back next summer.
Yeah, that'll be fun. A lot of good time there. Okay, good. Anything for Captain Malat? Any from our crew? Seeing none, I'll go to committee chair information. Like I said before on the communications, I'm looking forward to the presentation on the technical communications work. I think we can all be very, very happy that we're in a position to educate the public and ourselves on all these little facets that could kind of slip through the cracks. So thanks for everybody's help on this. Gary, do you have any more information or you'd like to give?
No, I emailed you guys that stuff.
Thank you. Good job. Okay, Mr. Janis, do you have anything you'd like to produce?
Nope, I'm good.
Good job. Okay, now we're to city staff. Adam.
Okay, I've got a couple items here. The first one is related to recent council meetings. The council extended the terms of all of the committees and commissions until August 30th of 2021. This was due to the deadline approaching for the committees and commissions to be reappointed by, I believe it was June 30th was the previous deadline. It was the previous termination date of the appointments. The council is going to be looking at some of the committees and commissions and some of their makeups. It does not at this point appear that there was any discussion about changing anything about the Public Safety Committee. However, the committee, when it originally started, was each member was appointed by a particular member of the city council.
Right.
So there are only 4 members of the Public Safety Committee, because at the time there were only 4 city council members. And since the deadline, the termination of the appointments was going to end June 30th, we just kept the 4 members, and then with an understanding that the 5th member would be appointed at large by the committee as a whole, or by the council as a whole. So we just have a couple more, basically a couple more months for that. But as the deadline approaches, I will keep the committee up to date on when you would need to reapply to remain on the committee. There was a question at one of the last Public Safety Committee meetings about bus passes being handed out. So the city does have some bus passes, and right now the code enforcement staff and the park rangers do have access to those bus passes. And if a bus pass would help somebody get to where they need to go, to either find shelter at a friend's house or a family member's house somewhere outside of town, we will provide those to help people move on, as it were. And then there were some comments previously about bringing up new items for discussion at the Public Safety Committee meeting, and it related to things outside of the specific direction that the council has given through the work plan. And I wanted to address that so that it was to clarify exactly what the charge of the committee is right now. So as codified in the municipal code, and as initially established, the Public Safety Committee's charge is to look at performance measures, to make recommendations for the improvement of efficient public safety services, and to do things that are within the work plan of the committee as approved by the council. From time to time, additional issues may come up, but those issues essentially need to be directed to the committee by the council. Committees being staff supported, the committee doesn't have the authority to have staff work on projects that are not council directed. So new items would need to be provided to the committee. If the committee would like to recommend a change to their work plan, there's nothing precluding that during the year. But but simply creating an additional work project outside of the scope of what the council has approved is something that's going to require the council approval prior to the committee working on and having staff support to process such a project.
Okay, the question then, I think for clarification, and I think it was Rick that brought it up. If there is something that is kind of an immediate that, it's not on our formal work plan, but it needs to be brought up to the city council, do we do it through this committee, or do we do it as individual citizens to the city council?
I think there's avenues for both. As private citizens, you're always able to talk to the city council members and let them know of issues that you believe that the city should be looking into. as a committee member, there is a process to recommend to the council particular actions. But the beginning the work to do that project, that can't start until council provides direction for it. So within the context of a committee, you could either recommend an alteration to the work plan and get their approval, and that could be something like have a catch-all work plan project that just says we review potential impacts to public safety services, and make recommendations to council, something to that effect, where it's just anything and everything that may become an issue. You want to have the ability to investigate and make recommendations to the council, or you could put together a specific recommendation for a specific type of issue. And I would caution against recommending specific items, only because they're, it clearly, as we've understood in the first year of the Public Safety Committee, things pop up from time to time, and it probably makes more sense to have a more of a catch-all type project for I'll say contemporary impacts to public safety. So hopefully that gives some direction. At the same time, I would say that we are almost in May, and the next work plan is going to be due in October. If something is not absolutely pressing and could wait, I would recommend that we just, during the development of the next work plan, which I anticipate starting in the next couple months, that we include a bit more, include a project that has a little bit more flexibility to address these one-offs.
I think that could be very well worked, and it's appropriate. It's kind of, because we can't anticipate things that we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, and and these things come up and need to be addressed. And I hate to go through weeks and weeks of trying to get it through the city council and all that. So if we can maybe have a catch-all type thing, that'd be kind of helpful, I believe.
So,
Adam, go ahead, Joe.
I think about 2 meetings ago, we had the one guy out and talked about the cameras. And I think we were going to make a recommendation that the city should rent 27 or whatever it was of those. Now, were we out of line doing that, or what's the deal on that?
The flock camera system was part of the technology review project, so that was absolutely within the purview of the committee to review. That recommendation was made by the committee, and it's currently being dealt with by staff in anticipation of presentation to the city council, with assistance by OCSD. This is something that
the budget process is beginning now. Is that when it's beginning? The city's budget process?
Well, technically, the city's budget process begins in end of January, but yes, it's getting to the point where we're preparing for the budget to be presented to the city council for consideration.
Will that be part of it?
I don't know. That's not. That's between this. It would be between the city manager's office and the Orange County Sheriff's Department. I will say this: the last information that I've received from OCSD about this program, this technology, is that I believe Sheriff Barnes is recommending that cities hold off for the time being on adopting these kinds of technologies until OCSD can figure out a more of a regional plan for this. But that's just information that I'm
Okay,
aware of,
but-
but I'm not I'm
when-
not able to keep speaking to it further than
Any of
that.
the communities, they should make a recommendation that it goes to council, that it goes to staff and decides if it's gonna be up or not. Recommend,
My
Joe,
apologies.
I can't hear you. You're breaking up.
oh, okay, so my, committee makes a recommendation, to council. Staff has got to take that recommendation to council, is that correct?
Sounds like it hasn't gone to the council yet. It's, the staff is still holding it for the appropriate time to take it to the council. Is that correct?
Okay, so, yeah, I was talking to Rick about this, and so with the budget coming up and decisions being made,
Mhm.
should that be part of the recommendations that goes to council before this all takes place? Or is it up to staff to decide when that goes to council?
Well, we're thinking here. Adam, you're,
My apologies.
there you go.
So I don't know that I don't know. That's the answer right now. This is
Okay.
not a technology that I'm involved in. So the recommendation, the rollout of this recommendation is hinges on a few things. One is, what does the recommendation actually lead to, which is based on the fact that this is a public agency and there are taxpayers' dollars at stake. A recommendation to look into a particular technology would naturally begin a bidding process from a number of providers. A committee that says we want the flock system, that the city cannot just pick one provider without going through an open and fair process. So there's a bidding process to it. However, at the same time, the Orange County Sheriff's Department have asked that the cities hold on to these types of adopting these types of technologies until it can sort a few things out. And I don't know what all those sorting things out are, but looking at some of the recent legislation aimed at significantly reducing the usefulness of these types of technologies, it may have something to do with that. So,
Okay, well, I guess my question was, what is the committee's function in all this? We take a presentation, and then we want to recommend this to council. So what you're saying is it's going to go through staff first to decide if that recommendation is worth it. That's why I'm a little confused.
Why don't I do this? Why don't I get some more information on this
Okay.
particular subject, and I'll come back and report on it.
But yeah, it's just not this one. It's the whole scope of our committee that we're just a little bit confused. We're just a little confused as of what we can bring up and what we can't bring up and stuff like that. So it's just the scope that I'm questioning. That's what I'm wondering about. So we want to get back with us then.
I can tell you this, the work plan is definitely the scope. Everything that is 100% council directed is located in the work plan. If it's not in the work plan, there's no council direction for it. That's the line in the sand, where it's very clear where the council direction is. So there is a process to do things outside of the work plan, but it requires council direction to do it.
Okay. So we've got okay direction. We can move in these certain ways because the council approved the work plans, previous approved.
Yes.
But we didn't think of what comes up and the vehicle of handling things outside our knowledge at the time, and without clear direction, we don't have the authority to continue on to it. So, Adam, I think what you're recommending is that we have a catch-all type of a work plan that will accommodate those unforeseen type things that need to be looked at on kind of an immediate basis for our next work plan update.
I think that would be a benefit. And I will say this, we would probably want to enunciate the specific types of things that would pop up. There's a lot about there's a lot about public safety that a committee could investigate. And so I think the council would have an easier time giving a kind of a carte blanche project if its description is accompanied with, you know, a good overview of its purpose.
Okay, that would have to be crafted verbally, I guess. You know, written down, crafted properly. Good. Okay. Anything else on the staff report? Adam, do you have anything more?
Oh, no, that is all I have. Thank you.
Okay. Joe, do you have anything more on your clarification request?
No.
Okay. Gary, anything from you?
No,
Nope.
got it.
Okay.
Don't call us, we'll call you.
Okay. Rod, do you have anything more? Yeah.
I'm good, thank you.
Fantastic. Okay, I think we're going to call for adjournment. We're going to adjourn. I move to adjourn the regular meeting of the Public Safety Committee to be held on Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 at 3 p.m. via Zoom teleconference. Do I have a second?
Second,
And we call for a vote. Adam?
Yes. Committee member Walsh,
aye?
Vice Chair Janis,
Aye.
and Chair Bercuda.
Aye.
All right,
We
that
still gonna use
passes.
Zoom at that point?
One more time, Joe?
That was Gary.
Are we still gonna be in Zoom?
Yes, at this point.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much for joining on, and keep on it coming. So there's more to have for us.
Thank you, Nick. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Talk to you later. All right. Thanks.